What happens when late-night sarcasm collides with unshakable discipline? When a comedy host who's made a career out of biting humor faces a man who built his career on grit, pain, and relentless reinvention. When John Cena, the most unlikely Hollywood success story, sits across from Stephen Colbert, the gloves don't come off, because they were never on. What begins as a polite, scripted interview slowly transforms into one of the most uncomfortable, unforgettable exchanges in late-night history. By the end of the night, someone will walk off that stage, but it won't be who you expect. The studio lights flared. The crowd buzzed with excitement. Cameras swept across the audience as Stephen Colbert's voice boomed. Ladies and gentlemen, my next guest is a 15-time WWE champion, a global icon, and now, somehow, a serious actor. Please welcome John Cena. Applause thundered. Cena walked in wearing a navy blue suit, tailored to perfection, his posture sharp and confident. He waved humbly, shook Stephen's hand firmly, and took his seat. Colbert smiled, not warmly, but knowingly. It was the kind of smile that hinted at inside jokes he couldn't wait to use. John Cena, Stephen began, steepling his fingers. From body slams to Oscar buzz. How does that happen? Did you just run out of people to elbow drop? The crowd laughed. Cena smiled politely, though his eyes narrowed for just a second. Well, Stephen, he replied calmly, growth comes in many forms. Some people grow out of sarcasm. Others grow into new challenges. The audience chuckled. Stephen smirked. Touché. But let's be honest, Hollywood's not exactly rolling out the red carpet for wrestlers. Did you audition as yourself, or as a meme? The jab landed. Cena leaned back, unshaken. I auditioned like anyone else, with preparation, discipline, and respect for the craft. But I get it. It's easier to joke about muscles than to learn about effort. A soft "oh" rose from the crowd. Effort, huh? Stephen raised his brows. You think that's what makes an actor? No, Cena answered smoothly. Empathy, listening, and range make an actor. But effort keeps them in the game. Stephen shifted slightly in his chair. And you have all three, I suppose? I wouldn't be here if I didn't. The tension in the room tightened. This wasn't the usual banter, it was verbal fencing, and Cena was holding his own. Stephen changed direction. All right, let's talk about your new film, Argon Unit. Gritty, intense. You actually cry on screen. I've got to say, I didn't think your tear ducts worked. The crowd laughed. Cena smiled tighter this time. That's funny, I wasn't sure your writers did either. Laughter erupted, sharper now, with an edge. Stephen chuckled too, but there was a flicker of irritation in his eyes. You've got some nerve, Cena. Most guests try to flatter me, not roast me. And most hosts, Cena replied evenly, try to hide their insecurity behind their cue cards. The crowd let out a collective gasp. Even the chuckles stopped. Stephen sat back, pretending to be unfazed. Touchy. Did I hit a nerve? No, Cena said, locking eyes. But I noticed you've been trying to. That's the difference. The audience clapped, not polite applause, but the kind that said they knew they were watching something real. Stephen forced a smile. Okay, so you can dish it out. But can you take it? Cena nodded. Absolutely. But I prefer my punches to land where they matter. That line lingered in the air. Stephen glanced toward the bandleader, signaling to move to the next segment, but it was too late. The crowd was locked in on the tension. Stephen leaned forward, his voice dropping just enough to sound like a challenge. You've built this whole thing, this persona, on being unstoppable. But deep down, aren't you still just a guy who plays tough? Cena didn't flinch. No, Stephen. Deep down, I'm the guy who is tough. The guy who learned that no matter where you start, you don't let anyone else define your ceiling, especially not someone sitting behind a desk. The crowd erupted in cheers, some even standing. Stephen opened his mouth to respond, but Cena stood up slowly, towering over the desk. Thanks for having me, Stephen, he said, buttoning his jacket. But I think we're done here. The audience roared. Stephen stammered. Wait, you're leaving? Cena smiled faintly. I came here to talk about my work. I'm not here to be your punchline. With that, Cena turned and walked off stage, the camera following his broad shoulders disappearing into the wings. The band played, but it couldn't mask the stunned silence hanging in the room. Online, the clip exploded within minutes. Hashtags flooded social media. Hashtag Cena walkout. Hashtag late night knockout. Hashtag respect the hustle. Fellow actors and athletes chimed in, praising Cena for holding his ground. By morning, headlines read, John Cena body slams late night with words, not wrestling moves. Calmly, Cena leaned forward. You've finally found one I'm not afraid to show. Stephen smirked and inched closer over the desk. Then let's really go there. You've built a career on being larger than life, the catchphrases, the muscles, the salutes. Isn't all that just branding? Cena didn't blink. Maybe. But I'd rather be branded with values than sarcasm. The crowd erupted in applause, louder this time. Stephen gave a tight laugh. Wow. Do you rehearse these lines, or do they just pop out with your morning eggs? Cena let the faintest smirk tug at his lips. I don't need to rehearse honesty. It's a full-time job. Stephen tossed his cue card aside, feigning amusement. Okay then, Honest John, tell me, do you think anyone in Hollywood takes you seriously? They cast you because you look like a superhero, not because they think you'll win an Oscar. You'd be surprised who takes me seriously, Cena said without flinching. But even if they didn't, I'd still show up, because I'm not here to impress talk show hosts. The studio went still. Even the laughter signs couldn't coax a reaction from the crowd. This wasn't late-night shtick anymore. This was a live standoff. Stephen's eyes narrowed. Sounds like you don't care what people think. I care about what people earn the right to say, Cena replied, his gaze locked. You're still working on it. Another cheer from the crowd, bigger this time. Stephen tried to recover with a jab. Quite the philosopher for a guy who once lost a match by being hit with a trumpet. And yet, Cena fired back instantly, here we are, me still standing tall, you still hiding behind punchlines. The heat in the room rose. Stephen half stood from his chair, then sank back down, visibly restraining himself. You know what? I was hoping for a fun interview. Then maybe you should have invited a puppet, Cena said, folding his arms. Not someone with a spine. The crowd gasped. Stephen straightened his cufflinks with exaggerated calm. Careful, John. This is the Late Show, not Monday Night Raw. And I treat both with the same respect, Cena replied, voice low, measured. But that respect is earned. The audience was torn between laughter and holding its breath. The exchange had gone beyond playful banter. It was personal now. So let me get this straight, Stephen said finally. You want to be taken seriously as an actor, but you're still cashing in on your WWE image. You're doing action movies, not Shakespeare in the Park. Why not own that lane instead of pretending you're Daniel Day-Lewis? A few defensive chuckles came from the audience. Cena nodded slowly. Because I'm not pretending, I'm expanding. I don't need to play Hamlet to understand pain, joy, or sacrifice. Real acting doesn't require a British accent, it requires truth. Stephen smirked. Truth, huh? So the truth is a wrestling champ can just reinvent himself as a dramatic actor and we're all supposed to clap. No, Cena said evenly. You're supposed to watch. If I earn your clap, great. If not, I'll still be standing. I've been booed in front of 20,000 people. I'm not here to please you. I'm here to be me. Stephen tapped his pen against the desk. And being you involves what? Moral superiority. Because you visit hospitals and post motivational videos. I show up for people, Cena said, even when there's no camera. Can you say the same? For the first time all night, Stephen didn't have a comeback. I'm not saying I'm better, Cena continued. I'm saying I've evolved. But you're still clapping for your own punchlines, hoping no one notices you haven't asked a real question in 5 minutes. The crowd broke into applause, some whistling. Stephen leaned forward, forcing a grin. You think you're the first tough guy to sit here and try to flex on me? I'm not flexing, Cena said quietly. I'm warning. Stephen laughed. A warning? This isn't a steel cage match. No, Cena said, standing up slowly, his towering frame blocking part of the camera shot. But that doesn't mean you won't take a hit. The audience roared, sensing the endgame. Stephen's smile faltered, but he pushed one last time. You walking out on me, John? Cena buttoned his jacket. I'm walking toward better conversations. Without another word, Cena turned and strode off stage. The band started to play, but the cheers drowned them out. Stephen sat frozen, gripping his desk, the cameras still rolling. By the time the commercial break hit, social media was already exploding. Hashtag Cena walkout, hashtag late night knockout, hashtag respect the hustle. Clips of the confrontation spread like wildfire. Analysts debated whether it was staged. Fans knew it wasn't. And somewhere backstage, John Cena was smiling, not because he won, but because he never backed down. But the stakes are real, because you mock people like me every night. And tonight, I walked in to say, enough. John Cena's voice carried across the silent studio like a warning bell before a storm. Stephen's eyes narrowed, a flash of something, anger, maybe fear, flickered there. The tension in the air was palpable, so thick it seemed the audience barely dared to breathe. The floor manager, normally invisible, hovered at the edge of the stage, headset clutched tight. Even the band had stopped fidgeting with instruments. The big glowing applause sign was forgotten, ignored. Colbert leaned forward, fingers steepled on the desk like a chess master contemplating his final move. All right, John. Let's cut the act. You're here to promote a movie, but clearly this is about more than film. You want to be seen as serious, as legitimate. But here's the hard truth, buddy. Hollywood respects tradition. Training. Gravitas. Not body slams and spandex. Cena didn't flinch. He leaned in too, locking eyes. Here's another truth, Stephen. People like you pretend to value authenticity, but you recoil when you meet it in the flesh. You smile and nod at the joke, but the second someone breaks your script, you get rattled. Stephen scoffed. Oh, please. I've sat across from presidents, Nobel winners, scientists. Exactly, Cena cut in. And I've sat across from wounded veterans. Children fighting leukemia. Communities rebuilding after floods. I didn't interview them, I helped them. There's more to legitimacy than lighting and cue cards. The room erupted in applause. It wasn't polite, it was raw, thunderous. Even a few backstage staff peeked around curtains to watch. Stephen's jaw tightened. So now you're implying I've never contributed anything real? I'm saying, Cena replied evenly, you wear intellect like armor to avoid impact. But not all of us are afraid to feel what we stand for. Colbert pushed himself up from his chair, now standing over the desk. You know what? I've had enough of your sanctimonious nonsense. You come onto my stage, mock my profession, challenge my integrity, and expect applause for it. Cena rose too, towering over him. I didn't come here for applause. I came here because people at home deserve to know that being underestimated doesn't mean being unworthy. Stephen's finger shot toward the wing of the stage. Then maybe you should finish that speech somewhere else. Gasps. A few audience members clapped in shock, others sat frozen, wide-eyed. Cena didn't move right away. He held Stephen's gaze, voice low but charged with electricity. When the lights fade, Stephen, remember this moment. Not because I raised my voice, but because you couldn't silence my truth. He turned and began walking off stage. No music, no outro cue, just the thundering, uneven applause of an audience who couldn't decide if they just witnessed bravery or chaos. Stephen stood frozen, lips pressed into a line, the cameras still rolling. 10 long seconds passed. And then, wait, Colbert said, his voice quieter but cutting through the air. You think I'm afraid to feel? You think I hide behind jokes? You don't know me, Cena. John stopped mid-stride. The crew held their breath. I know enough, Cena said without turning around. You hide in plain sight, Stephen. And the people who cheer for you deserve to see all of you, not just the punchlines. The crowd murmured, shifting in their seats. Colbert stepped around the desk, closing the space. Then why don't we do something no one expects? Cena finally turned. Like what? Drop the act. Both of us. No cue cards. No segments. One camera. 10 minutes. And we talk about everything you just accused me of. The challenge hung in the air. Cena's eyes narrowed, but there was a flicker of respect. "You're on," he said. "But I'm not here to win a debate. I'm here to make people see what's real." Colbert extended a hand. Cena looked at it for a moment, then shook it firmly. The audience exploded, not just in applause, but in cheers. They weren't getting the walk-off they expected. They were getting something far rarer, two people willing to step outside their roles, in real time. The cameras zoomed in, capturing the unplanned truce. And as the show went to an unscheduled break, viewers at home were left asking themselves, had they just seen the end of a feud, or the beginning of something much bigger? Was this the most powerful moment in late-night TV, or the most uncomfortable? Did John Cena push too far, or did Stephen Colbert finally meet someone who wouldn't play by the rules? Tell us in the comments what you think. Was this courage, or chaos? And if you want more unfiltered, unscripted moments like this, hit like, tap subscribe, and ring the bell, because you never know who's going to walk in, or storm out, next.